Welcome to the Tulane Future of Energy Forum. Please be seated. The session will begin momentarily. A reminder that Tulane University promotes and protects the free exchange of ideas. Freedom of expression includes the ability to engage or not to engage in the exchange, examination, and discussion of ideas. It does not include the right to disrupt the freedom of others. Therefore, we prohibit the physical or virtual disruption, shouting down, blocking, or suppressing of a protest, a demonstration, program, or an invited speaker's right to speak. Please note that disruptions of this nature may result in the removal from the event.
Am I good? Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Tulane University. It is my pleasure to introduce our next session, Where You Needed Most and How to Get There. If time allows at the end of our session, the panel will take questions submitted by the audience. To submit a question, please scan the QR code located on the screen. My name is Samantha Oblon, a junior majoring in management, minoring in accounting on a CPA track, and pursuing a certificate in energy. I serve as the undergraduate president of the Tulane Energy Club and stay actively engaged across campus as a proud Tulanean and leadership member of several other clubs. It is my pleasure to introduce tonight's speaker, Arushi Sharma Frank, a leader in energy technology innovation working at the intersection of community resilience, AI data center integration, and private capital investment. She advises organizations, including Partners Group and Emerald AI, serves as a non-resident expert at CSIS, and teaches as a professor at Johns Hopkins SAIS. Her career span brings deep expertise and a forward-looking, nonpartisan perspective to today's discussion. Importantly to New Orleans' battery storage resilience work, Ms. Frank pioneered for the state of Texas after Winter Storm Uri and for Puerto Rico. She's now bringing battery work to the city of New Orleans. City Council is currently reviewing a virtual power plant proposal which will provide hundreds of megawatts from solar-powered batteries when approved. Please be sure to silence your cell phones, enjoy the conversation, and please give me a warm welcome to our moderator, Ms. Arushi Sharma Frank. In addition, Ms. Frank has noted that anyone sitting in the front row will be invited to dinner with her, and she will be giving personalized career advice to them. Ms. Frank.
I think you're sitting in the front, huh?
I think I'm going to sit in the front.
Thank you all. I know student events are always a trickle until they're fully baked, but you're not going to miss out just because your classmates aren't here yet. So we're going to get started in full force. So today's conversation is about your future so much as it is about the energy future, because there really is no such thing as an energy future without the right people doing the right things. And right means something very, very specific, which is what I really want to drill into today. One of the things that's really important to me about why I do this, in addition to all the other things I do, is that I see that when it comes to labor and capital, we still treat people and energy mostly as labor, and we need to be treating them as the capital. That's the mindset I think you should all have. I think that's the mindset everyone should have that is pursuing energy, both in their academic career and in a sector. You are literally the capital that makes things go. If there's no other example of that you can think of, one thing you'll walk away knowing today is that I am personally a piece of the capital, the infrastructure that really makes things go. It's important for me to impart that to you and give you a sense of how you can do that in your own career and in your personal and professional arc. So this is my first time doing this at Tulane, thanks to Pierre Connor and some other wonderful friends and family in the Tulane administration. I do this all over the country, though. I'm an advisor at Harvard for their undergraduate energy club. I'm on the executive council at UT. I teach the PhD science course at UT for their Archer program, for the fellowship program in DC as well. And most of these lectures are intended to provide students very customized levels of engagement and tool sets so that they can do things and think things differently than they did before. It is still fairly rare, unfortunately, in my industry for folks who are still very active professionally in actual practitioner work to make the time and space for this sort of engagement. I'll tell you that when you can get it, wherever you can get it, take the chance to do it. and hang out with folks who are actually practicing in this space, in addition to the time, of course, you get to spend in labs and in classrooms. About me, this is a little hard for Samantha to do, so I decided I'd just slap it up on the screen and you can kind of hope for the best and try to figure it out from there. My very, very first professional endeavor, right, just like all of you. How many of you are undergrads, by the way? Okay, and how many grads? Anyone from graduate school? Okay, so it's almost half and half, which is kind of neat. Very first undergraduate experience, realizing that it was very important for me to be part of transformative governance. And I do mean that as very high level, was an internship in college with the Boston Consulting Group in India. That's going to come up again later today, but I want you to see this trajectory so that you understand that your trajectory is not defined by a linear perfection. It's not going to be defined by ChatGPT. Your mom and dad aren't going to be the ones that tell you what you're going to do. And even the things that you think you're going to do today are not the things you'll actually do. You will go through all of the iterations of becoming more and more skilled at the things that you are fundamentally very good at. It could come as great advice. It could come as an awakening. It could come as you had a really bad experience and you decided something was really awful and boring and you need to switch what you're doing. But today's lecture and the actual tool set and the mapping exercise we're going to do in it is a way for you to think about how this sort of map becomes your sort of map and why it's important for you to shape your mindset in terms of that fluidity of who you are, more so than which job you're going to get next and the next one and the next one. My entire goal in life has been to be deeply nonlinear, which means being deeply integrated, thinking about myself in terms of mapping out core and then first, second, and third layers of competencies. And today, the reason you all have notepads is so that you can start doing some of that here and hopefully do more of it and continue to do it as you have inflection points in your academic and then in your career life. Just for a quick reference on fun facts in the news that are related to things that I'm currently doing. Partners Group is a $150 billion US private equity fund operating out of Switzerland that has a distributed energy thesis in the United States. Middle River Power, which is a transaction I recently advised on, is intended to bring together energy storage and the utilization of pre-existing, meaning in-the-ground natural gas plants to support life extension for combined cycle units and also support solar power objectives at the same site by integrating storage, supporting both the gas plant's ability to operate when it can operate best and preserving that infrastructure in the ground today, and adding the battery to absorb solar power and serve regional PPAs in the area with solar clean energy. So Middle River is an example of a transaction in this space that is very interesting to private equity in the US right now. Emerald AI is a startup that does compute orchestration for the actual processes of computing in AI GPU-led process. So whether it's inference, training, just production of data sets, Emerald's tech is actually backed and part of NVIDIA's reference data center design. And the goal of that design is to create an operating asset at a data center and make it behave in a more friendly manner with the local utility grid and more broadly with programs around sustainability of operating data centers at scale in the United States. One more thing to leave you with is a little connection here that is a fun little arc in my career I could literally have never expected. Tesla Electric is up here on purpose. Tesla Electric is a retail energy provider in Texas. It competes with other retail energy providers in the competitive energy service areas of Texas. That's not a thing in Louisiana. Here in Louisiana, you have a regulated commodity provider of power, which is the same provider of your poles and wires. In Texas, you actually have both competitive and non-competitive electricity delivery entities. Tesla Electric was created. I actually did the founding documentation and the structure of the entire retail energy business for Tesla. And right after I left the company, actually, and then started doing all these other things, Michael Dell's son, Zach, called me and said, Arushi, can you come and build the same thing for me? And I said, what are you trying to do? She says, well, I want to do the same thing you did for Tesla Electric, but I want people to have batteries on their home on a lease basis. So I don't want people to have to just spend a bunch of money on a single Powerwall. I want to build giant batteries and then stick them on people's homes under a lease agreement. And then I want to run the whole retail energy operation as well. So, okay, like, all right, I'm going to advise you and help you do that. So that connection came out of absolutely nothing other than the fact that I was already doing the things that magnetized other people to want to work with me on the same kinds of things. And creating that magnetic energy for yourself is really what I aspire for everyone who I give this lecture to. It's all about magnetizing the things that you really want to do to you because people see that you have the capacities for it. Okay, and those proofs of concept, if you will, in your career come on the early side, and as you grow older, those proofs of concept then become the things that draw the most valuable experiences you can have in your life in terms of creating something new and better for the world. So that's enough about introductions. I kind of want to go straight into it now. We're going to go over benchmarking, the arc of your profession and the arc of your personal life, how they work together and what benchmarking really means, where you're needed in our industry and what that really means, how the career shapes itself around you. I gave you that introduction so you understand the meaning of where I'm going with that portion of the lecture. And then we're going to hit a mapping exercise, and I'm going to actually ask someone to come and perform the exercise here after I demonstrate it. And then last but not least, the last segment is about digging up your past. And I dug up mine for you. My personal statement applying to law school is in here in this deck, which you'll all get. And there'll be an exercise for you to do later to relate to figuring out how far you have to dig to find what it is that really drives you. Okay, so again, this 24/7, right? I get asked by a lot of students, how are you planning your career and stuff? Like, how did you get to where you are? And for me, I have come up with a taxonomy I call life benchmarking. The action is not really benchmarking the professional track, it's benchmarking the stuff around it. What do you want for your community, your family and friends around you? What are your real life goals beyond your profession? What is your thesis for sharing risk and reward with the people you live in and the people you live around? How is your health, and how would you like your health to be, mental and physical both? And your financial obligations versus intentions. Obligations mean you have student loans. You have to think about that. Do you want the student loans? If you don't want the student loans, you might get to do something that you couldn't if you had the loans, right? And then intentions. Are your financial intentions based on the fact that you already have in your family history real property you'll inherit? If you do, you should probably start thinking about what that means right now. There are a lot of people who leave their family, their community, they leave wherever they grew up, and they go to other places because they are interested in buying a home. The person who said this to me most recently, who actually said it to a whole room, was Governor Spencer Cox from Utah, who was at the Abundance event in DC last week. He has a family relative, I believe one of his kids, living in their basement, and he has another kid who has left or decided to move to another state to raise a family because housing is cheaper there. So right now, at the beginning of your arc, finding your personal benchmarks, writing them down, and revisiting them, I cannot emphasize how important that is for you when you think about what it is you're going to do with your life. More so than now, I think this is probably the first time we're serving high schoolers, and high schoolers are really deeply concerned about whether or not they will own a home, whether or not they'll be able to raise a family. These are not questions I asked myself during high school, but there are questions that folks who are just behind you and probably you yourself are wondering how you're going to answer. One more item about sharing risk and rewards that's up here. If you're wondering what that really means, I'm going to give you an example. At Tesla, outside the Palo Alto factory, a lot of the software engineers who decided to move to Tesla to work there, they live in group housing. And so they share the risk and reward of being a part of a really frenetic, interesting job environment, and they don't want to deal with the crazy housing prices, obviously, in the San Francisco Bay Area. So they're choosing to live in this structure. They're choosing to actually date in their community, live together as a group, share resources, share housekeeping and cleaning burdens, and they're doing kick-ass work that they could not afford to do otherwise, because to do this particular type of work, you have to be in the spot where the Tesla factory and the engineering team is, right? So there is a lot of thinking and strategizing around what you can do and where you can do it that requires you to think a level deeper and apart from simply that this is the job I want to do. Be super intentional about this, and I can't emphasize how important that is, especially as things like AI and the tech sector become more and more interesting to energy graduates. If you want to do that work, yes, you're going to move to somewhere where it is really, really expensive. Yes, you're going to be stuck with spending most of your salary on rent. What are you going to do to reverse that trend? Think about that. One of the other little sort of the fear sets that I have caught from a lot of students, particularly graduate students right now around the job market, is various fears about their perception about themselves. It's not really about the fact that there aren't great jobs out there. Those perceptions are things like fear of choosing the wrong thing. What if I pick something as an industry that's dying? What if I just can't afford the cost of living in the place I go? What if I'm actually underqualified? I don't really know anybody. I can't go and live in this new place and do this thing because I don't know the people. Most of those perception barriers, they will dissipate and they will clear your ability to see your horizon if you develop your life benchmarks first and stick to revisiting them throughout your career years. Excuse me. Again, these are perception barriers. If you live in the world of just looking at what you are and who you are for your professional side of your life, and you miss out on all this other stuff, people are going to feel inadequate. You'll feel inadequate. I would too. If you solve at least 3 or 4 of these things and you're really happy about where you are towards getting there, all this other stuff, it evaporates. It lets you be who you are in the job you're doing, and you start to become that happy, competent, brilliant person you were meant to be. And that magnetism is the thing that drives the next thing you do, not which jobs you apply to. So now that you have a sense of some foundations of how I think about life and work and career success, a little bit about the technical side of where you're needed. So right now in the audience, there is somebody here who was one of my life mentors, who's Tom Kuhn, who's sitting here in the row here with a red tie. You can read about Tom, actually, because he's also a speaker tomorrow on a panel that I'm running. Tom's career spans basically the rise of the electric utility as a major player in the basic financial infrastructure economics of the United States. He was for years a president of the Edison Electric Institute, which is a trade association, a 501c6 organization that represents the interests of regulated electric utilities in the United States. Just so you know, there are over 3,000 of those. A certain fraction of them are EEI members because they're a certain type of regulated, whereas others are not because their regulatory construct is under municipality or cooperative law as opposed to state public utility law. So that's the difference there. So why am I mentioning Tom? Okay, well, back in the day, in this arc, and that I got to be part of the arc too in my first job, which was in the gas utility sector. You took a job at a utility, and then you could just go and do 3 or 4 or 5 of these things over a long career. One of my old colleagues and friends from my first stint in the gas utility space, Rob Bennett, from a retired Atmos Energy. In his one career at Atmos Energy, he managed to do financial planning, accounting at his utility. He did data analytics. He went out and did environmental permitting. He inspected some stuff. He ran control room operations. Now in energy, these jobs don't sit in a single space. And so the thing that bridges the time where Tom led the utility sector's transformation and the time that I have inherited in my career where in the utilities industry, there are big gaps, but also a lot of the things that are happening in our energy economy don't happen inside the single vertical umbrella of utility anymore. You gotta go get those skills elsewhere. You might have to leave and go in and go out of a major energy company to get more of those skills. So how people acquire skills has changed, and as a result, where you should be looking for a job is also changing. Because getting more skills from more places, that distributed access to improving your own personal value thesis for who you are going to be in your career is fundamentally changing. You're not going to get it all at one place anymore. That's really important. And for me, when I started in the utility industry, I will say that there was always a lack of change management. That's an important word. Change management means that you are ready for a change that is going to come. When I'll tell you an example of this. I ran an audit at Exelon when I ran their generation compliance program of what we would do if a certain nuclear plant operator was out sick. It was a very basic thing. I realized at the facility we were at, there really wasn't anyone as qualified as this nuclear duty officer to do the job this person did, because that person had spent an entire career in one place, essentially, doing all the different things required to fulfill the role of an NDO, a nuclear duty officer, to perfection. So if he had to go and leave, I had to come up with a way to ensure that the plant could be compliant with all these rules and regulations, and we had to find 2 or 3 people and bring them in from other places to do all of the work of this one person. And what does that mean? Like, well, if this is the experience that I'm having now, that means that by the time that you are in those types of jobs, whatever the sector is inside the energy space, you should expect to be filling gaps where change management has failed. That's really important. You should be the reason that change management is now successful. People should be able to look at you when you walk in the door and say, I trust this person to learn all this stuff and fill the gaps that have been left by lots of folks retiring out and no one new coming in. This person is capable of absorbing things. This person is capable of doing something different. This person is excited. Yes, they did operations for a little while. Now they're interested in planning. Yes, they did software product design for a little while. Now they're interested in grid code design, right? They're interested in something a little different. I'm going to shove them in this, and I'm going to have a better sense of what happens when the guy above them or the lady above them is out of the office, and I can put this person in charge. There are all of these spaces where we need people, and the real thing I'm saying here, in addition to the fact that our energy sector is all about people being in it and doing really valuable things in it, what we need right now in particular is we need interdisciplinary bridge building. That is the thing that will lead us out of crisis, both real and perceived. You have to be interdisciplinary. You have to want to be. Actually, just now at another prior Tulane session today, Jim Burke, who is the CEO of Vistra, said the same thing. He said, I have a general counsel, and I also have 3 lawyers who report to me. None of them do law stuff for me, but I have them there because they're interdisciplinary mavericks in their field. They're there because they have competencies in multiple areas, and they boost their ability to be able to perform the strategy job that I need them to do as my direct reports. So Jim's advice was not, you all have to get a law degree, but it certainly was that you should prepare yourself to think about your career as a bit of a hop, skip, and jump, and not feel like you're doing the wrong thing if that happens to you, whether or not you planned for it to happen. I want you to hop, skip, and jump. I want you to be the next person that can look at an engineering standard for batteries and then go convince a regulator and then go write about it for the White House. I want you to be able to write, read, articulate, design, do all of those things. And you don't have to do them all at deep depth. All you need to do is be good enough at it to be a communicator and a thinker that can bridge between the folks who are deep experts and they don't talk to each other. You should be that person wherever you're going to be in any part of the industry. That is how you're valuable, and it's also how you hedge against the risks that the thing you're doing right now loses value in the marketplace that you're in. Yeah? Speaking of marketplaces, this is really important. Everywhere, every university I go to, there's a slightly different marketplace labor force problem. It's a very interesting one in Louisiana, and I have lots of friends who are from Louisiana. In southern Louisiana, they tell me, I have a multi-generational family business. We support the oil and gas industry and have a really great, thriving medical practice, or a thriving LLC that does law and related accounting services. So I'm set. I don't need to do anything. And then I talk to folks who are not from southern Louisiana that don't have that background, and then they're wondering, is it cheaper to live in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, leave the state, go to Austin and go work at the Tesla factory for 3 years, make money and come back? What do I do? Where is the labor market actually thick enough where I feel I can survive and also pay rent? It is literally that level of conversation that I'm having. And it's important because we have a brain drain problem in a lot of cities in the United States that is facilitated by a lot of the shifts we've seen in where younger folk go to seek their first jobs. So up here is a report you can look up. It's the Joint Economic Committee. It was sponsored by the chairman of the Republican subcommittee in Congress in 2019. And it basically says what we already know. Highly educated adults flow to dynamic states with major metro areas, leaving behind more rural and post-industrial states. The geographic sorting of the nation's most educated citizens may be among the factors driving economic stagnation and declining social capital in certain areas of the country. If we are connecting less with communities and people who are different than us, we could be more likely to see adversaries among those in whom we might otherwise find a neighbor. I don't need to tell you that this is one of the most adversarial, polarizing times the United States has ever experienced in its domestic politics. Forget our geopolitics. If you're wondering what kind of world you want to live in, something to think about is that your personal presence in the communities you grew up in or you have family in that may not be the best place for you to get your first job, still might be a place you want to build a life. And that goes back to connecting your professional arc, again, with your life benchmarks. Do you want to be able to own property in the place you grew up, or do you not care? Do you want to live around your grandparents for as long as you can, or does that not matter to you? Everyone has a different calculus, but part of it is that you have to recognize that it will be very challenging, and it's your job to figure out a way to create an arc for yourself that lets you stay connected with the community you grew up in, where you realize that the brain drain phenomenon has taken over, and it's going to be very hard for you to find the best job, right? One of the ways that folks that I know in New Orleans have kind of resolved this is that they work with New Orleans firms, consulting firms, for example, that have a really strong multi-state presence. So even though they live here, they do work for a client in Texas, a client in Florida, a client in Georgia. And that way they're able to stay in their community, enjoy their network, not break up with their partner or whatever it is that's driving this tough decision, and still be able to make a great living and have a great experience learning and growing in their own community. Now it's the exercise part that I just definitely want to emphasize as sort of the highlight of what we're going to do today. And it goes back to the first thing I said, which is exciting, perfect fit physicians have a way of finding people who work hard at shaping themselves. Skill acquisition, ecosystem presence, strong communication, people skills, resilient mindset, and awareness of the need to build cumulative knowledge in multiple areas, i.e. industry, interdisciplinary skill. That is where perfect fit physicians usually come from. I had a conversation with a student right before this about doing consulting work for companies while they're still in school. Right? So a lot of times internships are great paths to getting hired into your first job. Often you don't get hired by that person that had you as an intern because you're perfect at the work. They just hire you because they like you and trust you. That's a big piece of it. And if you think about that mindset, when that person picks up the phone 2 years from now and their friend is hiring and they realize you've outgrown your job, they will recommend you without you even knowing it. That is the level of magnetism that you will be able to achieve with this sort of mindset. Perfect positions, things that you're really good at, even if you don't figure it out, somebody else will, if you actually wear yourself on your sleeve in this way. Okay, so shaping a career around you. So this is an exercise I do in a marker board capacity, which I'm going to demonstrate. I got asked, I think, right after leaving Tesla at a UT event. Like, well, if I want to go work at Tesla, how do I get in there? Like, it's so hard. Like, how did you do it? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, well, it's not about you getting into the company. It's about you getting into the ecosystem of the company and deciding whether you like it. And then after that, if you really want to go there, great, but you might find that around that company, there's 600 other things you'd rather do. And so the 360 mapping exercise is basically how you should look for jobs, the shortest version of it. I'm going to go through it with an example, and I'm not going to pick something I know about. I'm going to pick something completely random. Okay, someone throw out like infrastructure stuff they like. Who likes, like, okay, give me like trains, planes, automobiles. Someone pick a thing.
Airplanes.
Airplanes. We're good with airplanes? Okay. What, a company in the... United. Okay, perfect. I don't know anything about United.
Neither do I.
I personally have absolutely no idea what United even does today. But regardless, they are my target. I am an undergrad. I am taking Engineering 101, and maybe I sort of can fly a plane, and that's about it. All right, like, well, what's happening inside United? How the heck do I get there? I'm going to go through this and give you examples. Right here at the bottom is sort of the most obvious thing, is ask people, right? Retirees from a lot of these companies are the folks who spill the beans on what these companies want and how to get in. If you can find a retiree on LinkedIn, in your community, wherever, talk to the retirees. Most of them are delighted to tell you everything they know and have far more time and space to do so compared to the folks you think you're targeting by reaching out to the chief commercial officer on LinkedIn, right? Go for retirees. Which schools, companies does the existing talent come from? Figure out the sources. What if they have a very specific recruiting agency and they only really take people from that recruiting agency? If that's the case, you need to know that. The other reason you need to know that is that if there is a bias in hiring already, the best jobs are not going to get posted from that company on the internet for you to pick from. That is super important, right? So if you know, or if you can find out where their OCI, their on-campus recruiting actually happens, you should either try to go there, or you should ask the college that does the OCI, what is the pipeline from their school to that particular position or that company? Understanding pipeline and how much capacity there is for you to come in from the outside and get a job there is super important. Don't waste your time. This happens a lot with consulting firms. So I went, one of my undergrads was the University of Pennsylvania. We knew that like BlackRock came to us second, but McKinsey came to us first, right? Just as an example. So be less excited about BlackRock, more excited about McKinsey, and strategize appropriately. That's an example of that. Another one to really look at is filings and interactions. So it's United, so they're a commercial carrier. They make filings. They talk to the FAA. They probably talk to the Coast Guard. They probably talk to the Federal Trade Commission. They probably talk to a bunch of state agencies. When you find the public filings in the they talk to the SEC, of course. They file 10Ks or whatever other reports they're required to file if they are publicly traded. All of these agencies, any filings they make have information about the company that you're not going to get from other sources. Look for them. I tell people the most, I think, out of anything, particularly in energy, that the best information about companies comes from reports and comments that they file to their regulators. Whoever your companies are beholden to is where you find out the best information about them. Okay, if you do that, let's say I found a Federal Trade Commission filing that somebody from United made. Guess what? It wasn't actually someone from United who made it. It's their law firm. Let's pick on someone that I know. O'Melveny and Myers. At the back of their filing is an example of the new trademark-worthy item that is the concern of the FTC filing. There's a company that does all of United's trademark work. And guess what? They have an office in your state. And maybe they're hiring, right? Now you realize that if they're doing United's work, are they doing somebody else's work? Remember that most of the big companies you're after, they have common vendors with other big companies that are similar to the one you're after, they're just not the same one. So if there is a set of clients that this company has, and you go work at one of the clients of this company, guaranteed path into United, guaranteed, is that you do well at another client account company of the #1 procurement vendor for United. They hire you, or they end up recommending you into United because they love the work you did for this other client and they're making tons of money off that client. This path is a real path. This is a very, very, very real path to getting into things. How I got into Tesla is a complete random mystery just like this. It had a lot to do with my subject matter knowledge and background, but the first person who thought about it that says, oh wait, maybe she would leave Exelon, which is this giant Fortune 100 energy company, and come here and do this crazy thing for Elon. Yeah, like she'll do it. Was a junior engineer who then grew in his field and worked at Tesla in a completely different role. And I met him 15 years prior at the American Gas Association, okay? So it's not just about vendors and clients, it's also about the people in the same ecosystem as you at any of your jobs who happen to go work for a vendor or a client of a company you're interested in. Remember that anything you do well in your life might just come back as someone suddenly remembers that, oh, this person just has the personality to go out and, shake all this stuff up and make it happen. That is super important. And that sort of reputational capital, you absolutely build it through these pathways that are ancillary, adjacent, and in rings around this target entity or this target job that you want. Okay, so I ended up putting that stuff in here. So I have here on the map here, let's see, target entity, affiliates, subsidiaries, parent companies, right? Where are you going to find that? The SEC reports, right? If you're publicly traded, you'll find it there. If it's not, who's got a PitchBook account here? Okay, who knows what PitchBook is? Let's start there. What's PitchBook? You can find any private company and their funding sources and any affiliations that are disclosed by that through a subscription to PitchBook. You have a question in the back? Exactly. You can also find their core capital transaction information on recent raises. If there are influential personal donors, those will be listed in PitchBook too. I would like anybody here who wants a job that makes them money to please get a PitchBook account. Share it with your friends if you have to. Yeah? More than anything else, this is a tremendously under-observed way to get yourself fundamentally deep into the job market in the sector around the company you're interested in working for. Other stuff here related to that, if you look here, it's not just often the positions of the company itself in these filings and in their sort of their stakeholder forums. Sometimes it's their affiliates or their core customers. So that's why this says up here, positions of core customers and stakeholders in the same forum. If I want a job in the general counsel's office at Walmart, and I know that Walmart's greatest supplier of plastic goods for packaging has an opening in their legal department, and I'll end up working on the trade deal that makes sure that packaging can still come from China even though foreign entity of concern rules are a problem for Walmart. You can bet in 3 years I'll have a job at Walmart. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. So this is why it's super important for us to think bigger and radially in relation to any company. Related to retirees, I'm going to just leave you with this one, and then we're going to move to actually having you all do an exercise like this. Where were leaders or executives before they showed up at the company you're interested in? And then where did they go next? Often if you talk to folks who have been at the company, that is a category next to retirees, which is former employees. That is a gold mine of information. And a wonderful opportunity for you to expand your thinking about where you should actually work. Last but not least, I think some of you might have recognized on my background slide in the beginning is that I have worked at 3 trade associations, which are, and I said this earlier when Tom was still here, 501c6 organizations. Okay, that's a tax classification, that's why I keep saying that for trade organizations. They can make money, but they are representatives of a trade, which makes them different than nonprofits, which make money but not profit, okay? So what trade associations do is that they represent large conglomerates of companies and interests. So if you go end up working at one of those, American Gas Association, where I started my career, we represented over 200 regulated gas utilities. I spoke to 13 of them on a given weekly basis. And I did that work in front of 8 federal agencies and the White House. So the networks that you can achieve are one side of being in a trade association, but the other side is to look at their stuff. A lot of times things that bother companies as individual companies saying out loud in the press or in stakeholder forums or in front of politicians, trade associations do for them. They're the layer between what the companies really think and want and what they are really after, and the trade association is sort of their arm, their instrument for getting those things accomplished in a way that they can't as individual companies. So knowing about where they file things is super important. Like right now, if you want to know what's happening in the gas utility industry and what local gas companies are worried about, you have to read the American Gas Association's filings before the Environmental Protection Agency, before PHMSA at DOT. Wherever it is that they have business, or trade association has a comment letter that you need to read. And in the footnotes of that comment letter, the information about what they're citing to is something you also need to read to understand what it is that is most important and of most value to the company you're going to go get interviewed at, right, if they're a member. Let's see, interest groups, existing talent, where are they coming from? We call them all of these. Let's see. Oh, I can't miss on this. This is super important. It's easy to find these days. Appearance of your company name on membership rosters of influential organizations. This is, of course, like a normal thing that people hear about, that companies donate. There are parts of PACs, political action committees, this and that. But they also are members of influential organizations potentially affiliated with your university. So K. Bailey Hutchison at the University of Texas, for example, often when I'm at a reception there, students find me, come talk to me, and ask me questions or ask for an introduction to someone in my network because they saw me on the executive council roster and realized, oh, I really want to talk to this person. And then they show up. So look for those connections too, where the company or the association, whatever it is that you're trying to work at or get introduced to, are they part of other things in your community? Universities, are they sponsoring some big event? Are they part of a major festival like South by Southwest? Find the places where you can run into those people that are not related to the job itself, but related to building relationships in the ecosystem with folks you otherwise really would not encounter on the street. Let's see. This is sort of obvious here, but I want to say it anyway. Testimony, just like filings, right? Testimony is a wonderful place to figure out what is bothering someone. I am still shocked at the number of CEOs I speak to where I just spout something they said last week in Congress, and they're like confused, like, oh, how'd you know that? It's like, well, you said it last week. You have to look at testimony. Testimony is very seldom covered in the news compared to other types of messages and statements that are made by executives. So finding that is sort of like finding gold that nobody else found. And now that I've told you, you all know, but everybody else who didn't come doesn't know, so you have an advantage. Yeah? All right, so I've now gone through this exercise through an example. I've decided that my chosen path is to definitely interview 3 retirees. I'm going to go work at a competitor of United, but I'm going to find the competitor through their common vendor and go do that for a few years. Someone's going to figure out that I'm really good and I'm going to get poached. And that's actually pretty much exactly what has actually happened to me in my industry. So this is my way of telling you that this is also a strategy for developing the sort of magnetic attraction that makes companies that you might actually really want to work at come and find you. Let's see, I am going to now erase this and give everybody, we've got plenty of time here. I'm going to give everyone like 7 minutes, well, maybe 5 minutes, to just do their own version of this on your notepads. I'm going to ask someone else to come up here and do it on the marker board. So give yourself a made-up or a real job acquisition target. Look at this on the screen and try to come up with at least five different threads, if you will, of places around that create a 360 vision for how you can get into that company or that industry. So it is, yes, okay, now I'm starting the 5 minutes, so please everyone go ahead, and then whoever wants to volunteer and come up here, we'll go through the exercise together. And we'll also have troubleshooting Q&A, yeah? So even if you don't come up here, I'm going to have time for you to ask me what you're missing, if you think you're missing something in terms of how to get into a certain ecosystem. there a question? Yeah, go ahead. Come up here. So. Sorry? You don't have a question about that?
Yeah, I'll do it though.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Have a seat, yeah. Come on over. We'll give people a few more minutes. Yeah, just sit closer to the front so you can come up easily. Yeah, sure. I see folks doing a little bit of writing, so I'll give it a couple more minutes. Okay, is this on? Perfect. Okay, I think we've got two volunteers right here. You want to come on up first? Take this mic. Introduce yourself and get them on the board.
I'm Chris, and I'd like to work at...
It's a horrible color. Let's try a different one. Let's try red. Go for this.
Shell, but it's very hard to get a job there. So I'm going to look at what Shell does. They do oil, gas, and renewable energy. So they have to move, they have distributors, they have people they have contracts with. I could go work at, for oil, you have to account for, there's a ton of accountants that have to account for and audit all the energy coming out of the ground every day. So I could go work at EY for a while or Big Four, because I know accountants are always needed now. I could go work for a midstream Big Four, like Kinder Morgan, Energy Transfer. What's the other one? I could go work for a downstream company that they sell energy or gas to, such as Phillips 66, or I could just go do a grad program as a competitor, and then after a couple, excuse my handwriting, after a couple years, if I find a mentor and keep networking while I'm in the industry and showing forward interest, then hopefully I will get the job that I desire.
Awesome, thank you. Are you in accounting, FP&A, or accounting major right now?
Master's in finance.
Math and finance, okay.
No, master's in finance.
Master's in finance, all right. So a couple more things though I don't need that, but yeah, keep that for yourself. Let's make it a little bit wider for you. All right, so you have here midstream, downstream, this is vendor, and this is again, what is this one right here?
Oh, just a grad program for a competitor.
Okay, this is an comp program. Okay, there's some things I want to see. So, Shell is a member in different states of different kinds of associations. Yeah? In Texas, they're a member of the Texas Competitive Power Association. In Washington, D.C., Shell is a member of two things: the American Petroleum Institute, and it's also a member of the Electric Power Supply Association, where I actually worked. Shell used to be one of my member companies. I did a ton of work with them in California. They also have, in addition to oil and gas and renewables, something very important you all need to know about, which is a scheduling coordinator. A scheduling coordinator is the entity that is the interface between a grid operator and an actual operating asset. Shell specializes in actually the trading, scheduling, bidding of futures, forwards, and energy commodity contracts in multiple RTO markets, and they actually have vendor services that are both in-house and adjacent to all of these functions, in addition to the full-on commodity business. So, to your question about competitors, I would expand it even more. Citi has a competing desk, and you can go pull up a report, like right now on your phone, of the California ISO market participant list, and closer to home, ERCOT's market participant list, and see everybody who does the same thing Shell does, and who they talk to all day. And not only that, because these are public regional transmission operators, any company rep from either of these is publicly listed in both of these websites. So you can find the people who actually sit for these companies very easily by going to the grid operators' websites. Anything else to add now that I've opened up your brain 20% on this? What are you thinking?
The floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Just give him a hand. Thank you. All right, your turn. Come on up.
So I kind of took different directions.
Okay, let's
My
flip
overall
this so that you
company-
can.
My overall career goal doesn't have a name. So I'll show you what I'm thinking.
Okay, now you gotta put that mic closer to you when
okay.
you speak. Yeah, and I'm gonna sit down. And you can have this if you'd like.
Okay.
Let's get right there, yes.
So my overall goal is to work for an energy private equity firm. Now, which private equity firm? I don't know yet, because there's a lot of different paths that can get me there. And the path that I would like to take is through consulting, is taking a consulting path. Specifically, EY Parthenons has an energy consulting path, KPMG has an energy consulting path, PwC has an energy consulting path, but these places are really hard to get into. So just starting with EY, I'm going to start by looking at Tulane alum. I'm going to look at either working for a competitor or I will go to a company that they consult for. Now, figuring out Tulane alum that works specifically at EY Parthenon in their energy group is pretty difficult. So I can look at the company more broadly, so any area, so accounting or finance or any specific broader area, and perhaps they know someone in the energy group. Or if they don't, then they can keep my resume in mind for when I eventually apply, they'll be able to vouch for me. Then I can go to a competitor who will notice my skills, and I'll get recruited by EY Parthenon's energy practice if they see I do really good work at a different consulting firm. And then the other option would be to look at what companies EYP really works for. Maybe they already work for PE firms, and I could go straight into those PE firms. Or what other opportunities could come from these folks, these individuals. And that's my career path so far. That's what I'm
Awesome.
thinking.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm going to take this one over. We'll switch places here.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess first thing I'm going to ask you is, when you say an energy PE firm, what exactly do you mean? Who's an example?
Energy Capital Partners.
Okay. Anybody else come to mind as a competitor? Because you have a competitor here, but I'm curious to know, you mean for these or ECP?
I'm going to stick with ECP, but
Okay.
I would do like a oil and gas one
Okay.
if I had the opportunity.
Got it. Okay, ECP or generally speaking, oil and gas?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Relatedly, now is the fun part. Private capital is interesting because you already know that there are two things going on here. There's equity, and then there's credit or debt. Equity is also a growth stage, large cap, mid cap segment. And there's stuff around it in worlds like venture, insurance funds, et cetera, et cetera. So ECP as an entity, one entire sort of like world to get into it, is actually the entities that are giving ECP money or are part of JVs or other co-financing structures with ECP. So try to getting into them. You could actually end up sitting in an ECP board meeting because you went and worked for one of their JV partners. And then the last thing to know, that if you're interested in private finance and capital as a sector to be in, is that they have their master entity and their master fund, but then they also have the ability, and they do, split out their work into what is called project companies. Okay, so when you have project companies affiliated with a master entity, figure out what those are. Again, this is publicly available information for the most part, or get PitchBook, and figure out where they're putting their money and their people together, and whether they've just acquired something or about to acquire something into the ECP family that is a place where there has been transition movement and you can go in and get a job and end up getting acquired by them, or end up getting invested in by them. So why this is important is because at the end of the day, money goes into things that are part of public records. So as an example, net power. Okay, so a long time ago, before net power was a big deal, right? And net power was still a fledgling, closed loop carbon recycling, CO2 recycling facility in Texas. I filed their power generation company application. And in that, I had to show the upstream ownership of everybody who was invested in net power that went all the way back up to the place I actually worked, which was Exelon Corporation. So with ECP, finding the entities where they have either project-level investments, joint venture investments, or other partnerships with other parts or types of capital. One of those where they have that a lot is utilities. It's the entire utility segment. The utilities raised from a variety of different types of financing entities. So you're going to find a lot of shared capital running into big utilities. And these guys all have boards. Literally everything I just made a box around has a board. And if there's a board, there are board members. And if there are board members, you have just multiplied the number of people you can badger on LinkedIn by a factor of 10, right? Which you should then do. And then everything that you just heard your colleagues say about contacting the Tulane alum network goes from being related to looking at 4 big consulting firms to looking at this entire ecosystem to see where there are people who know somebody inside it. Make sense? Yes. You're gonna go do homework now, I know you are. Feeling good? Do you have any other questions or thoughts about what else you could add here?
Perfect.
All right, awesome. Give her a hand, thank you. Wonderful. All right, so I'm gonna put this one down and get back to this here. Okay. Let's do a little Q&A related to everything that I've said so far. I'm going to leave this on the screen for it. We have about 10 seconds. Oh, we don't have time for Q&A. Okay, so we can do that after that. So that is pretty much the end of the lecture. And doing this exercise for yourself and then getting together with friends and colleagues to brainstorm it is really where I hope to leave you with. Thank you so much for attending, and come up here after the session to chat. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Arushi, for that session. That was wonderful. And thank you all to all of our participants for coming and joining this session. We'll see you tomorrow for day 2 of the Tulane Future of Energy Forum. Thank you all.